For the past few decades in the Ames newspaper business, there have been countless headlines, but only one headline maker: the printing press. No matter how big the story, it could not land on the customer's doorstep before starting here at the Tribune printing facility. And now, the machine that printed the paper that kept Ames informed is part of history itself. The Goss Urbanite printing press began its job in 1966 and was retired in 2010. Another press in another town took over. For the first time since 1868, the Tribune no longer had machinery in the City of Ames to print a newspaper. Let's take a look at the imprint this machine and its workers made on the Ames community. To understand the importance of the Goss Urbanite press, we need to look back. Page 1. We start at the beginning, back in 1868, when the first newspaper in Ames was published. In April 1868, the Ames Intelligencer was born. In 1911, the name was changed to the Ames Daily Intelligencer, then back to the Ames Intelligencer in 1913. During this time period, there was also a pair of other publications, the Ames Times and the Ames Evening Times. The Ames Weekly Tribune began publishing on May 15, 1913, and for decades to come, the old lead type printing was the norm. The Ames newspaper was still using the lead type printing when a recent college grad named Verl Bergeson came on board in the early 1950s. From giving tours to local groups to rising up to publisher, Verl Bergeson was involved in all parts of the business.
I graduated from Drake back in 1951, majoring in journalism and minoring in labor relations. Then I spent 3 years in the Korean War and then came to Ames. I was an advertising salesman and then sort of climbed up the ladder till finally I was publisher and co-owner. Well, schools would bring kids in, and they were always really interested in a couple, three things back in the old days. First of all, everything was lead. So there were lead pigs, which were long bars of lead that you fastened onto the linotypes where you set the type. And then the big cylinders that were fastened onto the press were made of lead. So they were always interested in watching people with a ladle pour liquid lead into the different forms, and then when the press started, this was fascinating for them. Sort of interesting because you had to be almost a mechanic to run it, and there was always something going wrong, so you had to fix things and so forth. So it was a piece of work. It served its purpose from, I suppose, that we got that press in the 1920s. And the actual press run stayed about an hour and a half. It didn't vary, maybe 2 hours. And then we had a lot of sections that we would print and have to insert into the paper, so the press was going more than just an hour and a half each day. We print sections for grocery stores and sections for different stores.
Despite the mechanical challenges, the printing press was steady and reliable. So it had to be a very big event to say, stop the presses.
The one I remember very vividly is when Kennedy was killed, which was a Friday noon. I was at Kiwanis Club, and we stopped the press, and then we had a little discussion among the rest of us in the newsroom about could we say that Kennedy was killed, because it had not been officially confirmed. So I remember in our headline we had Kennedy shot. And then the next day we confirmed the fact because we didn't want to, even though everyone was saying off the record that he had been killed. So that was one time we stopped it.
Page 2, real-time versus reliability. The world has changed greatly over the past 50 years. So has the way the world gets information. News is now instant and available at your fingertips 24 hours a day. However, there was a time when the Goss Urbanite was new technology and Ames was on the cutting edge.
When we bought the new press, which was a passion in wanting to get a better machine. But it was really a turmoil in terms of could we afford a $500,000 press at the Ames Tribune. And we wrestled with that for months, really, until we finally found a banker who was willing to back us, and we did it. We got the offset press about 1966. It was a Goss Urbanite. One of the unusual things these days, it was a German plant in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So our actual press came from Cedar Rapids. That press was capable of doing a lot of color, and it was a state-of-the-art press at that time. Even though now, 45 years later, it will be torn up and probably hauled away. But it was a state-of-the-art press, and did a great job in printing and color and so forth and so on. So there was just one other urbanite press in Iowa, which was at Clinton. But we sort of prided ourselves because our color was so much better than the Des Moines Register and that type of thing. So it was a good move. You need to have some mechanical ability, and with that in mind, you could run the press. First of all, as you said, the papers came in big rolls of newsprint, maybe 3 feet in diameter and basically about 30 inches wide. So we'd haul those around with a forklift and fasten them on the press. And then the pages were aluminum plates. Pictures were photographed onto the aluminum plates, and they were fastened on the press. And by the time they got all those on, we started. And as someone said when they were trying to describe how does offset printing work, someone said that the example would be if a lady put on lipstick and pushed a Kleenex against her lipstick, that the lipstick would be on her Kleenex. That's the way offset works.
When this press was installed in '66, '67, offset printing was a pretty new thing. And it took 15, 20 years to really get the technology improved to where it was actually, smooth operating, and to where people could produce products in a very efficient and smooth manner. Plate problems were common. If you had to stop the press for any length of time, say you might have had a web break, and sometimes the plates would oxidize and get spots on them. So you start the press up after a problem, then you have problem number 2, you've got oxidized plates, and there'd be spots all over the page, so you have to stop and replace the plates. But as the technology improved, we got a new plate system called subtractive plates, and the problem with oxidizing plates went away completely. Our chemistry improved so you could maintain your ink and water balance better, and you could run a drier sheet, so you would have less web breaks. So that kind of helped with that problem too. So as technology improved, so did the output of the paper and efficiencies. Our circulation department would give us a press count every day, and that was the goal, is that we had to print that many copies for the run. For the Ames Tribune, it would normally take about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how smooth the run went. Sometimes it was more than one section for the paper, but that would be for one of the sections. One roll of paper weighed about 700 pounds. Normally, like 2 8-page sections, an 8-page A section, 8-page B section would take about 2 full rolls of paper just for that section. And then if there was a life and time section besides that, maybe 6 or 8 pages, so it's going to take another full roll, and maybe what they call a dinky or half roll besides that. So it may take a ton of paper for just one issue, or more, over a ton of paper. When you walk in the door, you were locked into what was required to be done that day. You really were. You didn't just say, this is a bad day, when you got partway through the day and said, I've had enough, I'm just going to go home and we'll start over tomorrow. No, you stayed here until it was done. I've been here all night before because of problems, so yeah, it was a tremendous amount of pressure, but some people thrived on that pressure. It made you feel, so much more part of the job, and getting it, actually, success in getting the job done.
Page 3, the end of an era. The digital age has changed the face of nearly every business. When it comes to the newspaper industry, the change has been dramatic.
I lived during the golden age of newspapers because of the fact that they were very dependent to be the object of transferring news. Now the electronics have changed the presentation of news, and now everyone has their Twitters and their stuff, which I have no idea how to work or what it means, but I do know that people can get anything they want to get electronically. Some of it they probably shouldn't get, and as opposed to where we sort of selected the coverage based on our what we felt people wanted in those days. And it's a different world out there, and the way that people are getting their, quote, news. First of all, it's a different type of news, and they get it in all sorts of strange ways that I don't understand or care to, but it's changed a lot. Basically, the electronics of new equipment enable them to print faster, print color on every page, do it economically. So we could actually save lots, 6 figures, by having Iowa Falls print as opposed to us printing it. Because of their facilities and so forth, it was just a logical thing to do. And more, Des Moines Register is, Cedar Rapids is printed elsewhere, Iowa City is printed in Des Moines, and it goes on and on and on.
While the sounds of this old printing press have been replaced by clicks and ringtones and tweets, it's easy to see that the Goss Urbanite printing press made its mark in Ames.
I mean, it was really the heart and soul of the newspaper, and everybody appreciated that. And so, yeah, I mean, you kind of did. So everybody kind of took care of it in that respect too, because you knew what it was and appreciated what it was capable of doing. You think about how many jobs it's printed in its lifetime, it's just absolutely staggering to think about the number of revolutions or blanket and placeholders that went around. It's amazing, it's amazing. You always, you knew that the product that you produced was going to be read and seen by, X number of people every day. And of course, there was pride in that because you wanted it to look good, of course. And then, yeah, just simply to do it in an efficient manner, to have it out the door on deadline so it, makes it to the street at the time it should, was a pretty key part of that, and a sense of pride to do that.
What's the purpose of, quote, the press? Is it a historical type document where it has all the marriages and all the weddings and all the funerals and all the deaths and all the births and so forth? So, it's sort of a mystique type thing to me of what a newspaper is all about, which has made it really fascinating for me to be involved with it. But it'd be sort of interesting if you could wire into that old press and say what impressed you most in your life of 45 years at the Ames Tribune. And there were lots. It's the history of the community, and very significant, I think.
The Goss Urbanite printing press. From 1966 to 2010, history was in good hands.